the hadith that we've been going through the An-Nawawi collection, I hope, and feel free to share otherwise, that the hadith are clearly, immediately practical, obviously fundamental, like you can see how they're core in Islam, and they are overarching, meaning you see them present in so many different concepts, so many different stories. Is that the case? Feel free to say no. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? That's a couple possibilities, but I've never exacted them up until now. No one's been kicked out or executed. This one is probably the one which is immediately not so clear. How's this going to be implemented in everyday life? Anyone take a look at the hadith already? So you can see what I mean, where this seems very technical. It seems so much less applicable or practical or daily used. But you will see how, no, that's not the case, and how even if it may be less immediately applicable day to day for everybody, it's still fundamental and still overarching as a theme and as a principle. So I have two scenarios. One scenario is person A left his laptop in a shared workspace. There's only three other people who share this workspace: person B, C, and D, and E. It's 4 people. B, C, D, and E. No, it's 5 people total. It's A, B, C, D. Wake up, guys. So A, B, C, and D. You give them names. I didn't think that far. He comes back a couple hours later, and his laptop is missing. The only other person there was person number 2. And person number 3, who also shares their workspace, bears witness that nobody else was in and out all day. The only person in this workspace was person A, and now the laptop is missing. So it was person B. So person A is telling him, where's my laptop? Person C, third person, says no one else has been here all day, and there's only one fourth person, he's off today. Whatever, you figure it out. So he says, I have no idea. It's not my job to watch your stuff. What happens next? So Adam is the claimant. Adam, it's your laptop, you're person A. I messed up already, but you're person A. Mu'ayyad, you're person B, you're being accused. Sorry, you're just going in order, it's nothing personal. Abu Amira, you're the judge. Yeah, you have the biggest beard. You're the judge. Everybody else, you can choose to be either Mu'ayyad's friend or Adam's friend, and your job is just to argue what people may argue in these situations. Be natural. What would people argue in such a situation? Feel free to be as creative as you want, as colorful as you want, to add as many details as you'd like. So everybody else here, you're either Adam's friend, who is accusing Mu'ayyad of taking his laptop, and then Abu Amira is the judge. So you guys can choose to be either friend of these, and you create whatever background information or colorful details to the story, or just plain noise. Like you just go to Abu Amira and be like, hey, what do you want to eat later? Like to help confuse him a little bit, and let's see what verdict he comes up with, who he judges against, or whatever decisions he make. I want to see what would you do in this situation. So it's not necessarily about what would you judge. That's a part of it. But I'm not going to judge you based on just your judgment. So you say, oh, I said Mu'ayyad took it. No, I want you just, how would you deal in the whole situation? Yeah. Sure. Oh, so that's why I'm gonna get to that. Don't put your finger on me. That's the keep going. Let me see where it goes with you guys. Let me see your backpack. Don't touch me. That's Mu'ayyad's a New Yorker. Don't mess with it. Scenario number 2: sisters. Person A lent person B. You guys have the same names. You're from the alphabet planet. Person A lent person B their car, and person B returns it with a scratch. Okay, let's do. Person A is Sevi. Do you have a car? Okay, you're lending. It's not yours. It doesn't matter. It's like I didn't dig that deeply. So you're lending it to Suha. Suha's given it back to you and has a scratch on it now. You say it clearly wasn't there before. She says it was, and yeah, that's it. And then the judge is Fatima. You're gonna settle this. Everybody else, choose a friend, make some noise, and let me see where it goes. Things I want you to think about: what's fair and what's not. Who has to prove what? How do you initiate, Fatima and Abu Amira specifically, how do you initiate this investigation? How do you establish your authority? Do you have any authority? What do you need to be looking out for? Everybody else, how is this decided fairly? I don't want you just to clown around, as fun as that is. You could do so. But more importantly, I want you to consider a real situation as described, and you're actually the friend of the person that you're engaging with, and this is an actual problem. What do you do here? You guys have, 5 minutes. I think that's a good amount of time, 5 minutes. Let's go, guys. Gather over here. Everybody gather around the people. Does the car have a dash cam? If guys, do whatever you want. Like, come to whatever conclusion. Investigate. I don't want to add details that would push it towards a certain conclusion. I want you guys to freestyle. No physical violence. You guys are just observing? You guys just chilling, observing? Oh, okay. Come join the whole hullabaloo over here. Two minutes. Playing games at work, you should get fired, bro. Like, forget the laptop. You don't even. All right, are we ready to pass the verdict? Who's getting executed? Who wants to go first? Hmm? Oh, come on. It's light work. So, first observation is everybody turned into the investigator and the judge. There was one appointed judge and investigator. On both sides, everybody spoke way more than them. So, that's like the first observation. They're heading the investigation. Everybody else, you're supposed to be a distraction or helping your friend or enemy or whatever. So, that's one observation I'll make. But anyway, let me start off over here. Let's start off with the sisters, because you're on my right. What conclusions did you reach, Fatima? Who's guilty? Who's going to jail? Who has to say goodbye to their kids? So, what did Suha have to say after that? All right. Interesting. Who's the defendant? Who's the one making the claim? Who's the plaintiff? Sevi, right? She's the one who's making the claim. I mean, it's not always clear. That's part of what we're going to investigate now. It's not always as clear as you think, and it is consequential. And then the defendant is obviously going to be Suha. What is the pieces of evidences that you used? So, when Suha said it was AI, what did you do? You told her, get out of here. That doesn't happen. And she just had to... Just admit it. Just admit you're wrong. All right, that was like an added part from you guys, which is fine because I told you to do that. But the idea here is that no, she has to pay, right? She does have to pay. She's got to be taken accountable. So good. Over here. Oh, Amira, how'd these guys do? Fight it out. That's great for Adam. It's not really, thank you. It's not really what we care about right now about Adam's information or his insurance. That's good for him, but we want to come to these real hard to answer questions because this is a fun scenario, just an experiment. But what if it was real? Somebody comes in here says, I left a laptop on that chair and I went to go make wudu. Now it's gone. What are we forced to do now? Now it's no longer a joke. It's serious. And they say, no, everybody who's in here, don't leave. Nobody leave until we figure this out. What's the first thing that some of us will say? You can't tell me what to do. I got stuff to do. Don't leave. Get out of my face. And he's like, no, one of you stole. I'll tell him, how do you know that? Right? Then we'll go back and forth like that. Then what? We might start fist fighting. It happens. And then is there a system for this, Islamically speaking? Is this an everyday problem? It is. It's not just about judging on the highest level of the judiciary. That applies to this as well. But it's about judging and figuring out these disputes that will happen day to day, which is exactly what the Hadith says. So, very quick disclaimer, you're not going to be qualified to be a judge at the end of this Hadith. Don't say, oh no, I took the Hadith. Everybody who has problems, let me know. I'll add to them. Don't do that, please. So, but it will give you at least this general framework and allow you to practically use this thinking process at the very least to stay out of trouble, if not to correctly pass judgment should that situation occur, which it could. Right? You may have to judge between your kids. Doesn't necessarily mean to be a court of law, grand theft auto. Could be just between two kids fighting, right? Your two children, two students, two people dispute in the masjid, and they ask you to give your input. So the first things that I want you guys to consider, I was going to consider through your answers, was who's initiating the claim and who's defending against it. That's significant. What are the pieces of evidences that you'll consider, and what's the ones that you won't? So right away when I asked Fatima, what did you do? And she said she's AI. She said that doesn't make any sense. When the real answer should be, as we'll see in this hadith, which is the system just reverts back to its original question, which is, where's your proof now? So because she could say, I have proof that it's AI. Maybe Sevi's been working AI the last 6 months and she's been manufacturing this case against Suha to just like ruin her character or to take money for a new car. Sevi wouldn't do that, but hypothetically speaking, the hypothetical Sevi. So is that far-fetched? Is that impossible? Putting aside characters and the people that we know, a person could do this. Of course they can. Is it far-fetched technology-wise? Have people done it? Do people do it all the time? They do. Do cases get overturned and falsified even after evidence? They do. So this is pretty serious. So these are the questions that you want to consider. What's fair? What's not? How would you respond if this was brought to you? How do you begin asking questions, and what questions should you ask in the first place? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot more at stake than a scratch on a car or a laptop. Yeah, I did not. Yeah, this is just like the original. I get your message though. Hurry up, I got you, bro. You're right though. You're right. We tend to do that. Yes, Abu Mira. Yeah, so that's something that we're gonna see more and more of as time goes on, and especially when they want to commit even greater atrocities that they'll have to hide and falsify. They've been doing that. Governments and armies have been doing that for millennia, but now it's even on a greater scale, and they have even greater ability to falsify information. So stuff like this becomes even pertinent. And we're gonna get to just a little bit about AI when we get to corroborative evidence and other things. So the hadith, I'll read it quickly just for the sake of time. عن عبد الله بن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: لو يعطى الناس بدعواهم لادعى رجال أموال قوم ودماءهم ولكن البينة على المدعي واليمين على من أنكر. He said, صلى الله عليه وسلم, the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and his father. He said that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, if people will be given according to their claims, then men would claim the wealth and blood of other people, but the burden of proof is upon the plaintiff, and the oath is upon the one who denies the allegation. Face value? It's clear, right? If people were to be given according to whatever they claim, then men would claim the wealth and blood of others, but the burden of proof is upon the plaintiff. The plaintiff is not a good translation here because that's a modern term. Claimant is a better one, but they're synonymous for the most part. And then the oath is upon the defendant or the denier. That's also a better translation than defendant, because plaintiff and defendant could have other meanings depending in the context. But either way, they work for us here, plaintiff and defendant. Couple of issues that we're going to address one by one, all kind of somewhat separate, but obviously connected. The first order of business is, what is the subject matter of this hadith? So we spoke about the hadith when we spoke last week about, what was the hadith? La darra wa darra. There should be no harm or reciprocation of harm, or initiation of harm or response of harm. And that hadith sets up one of the 5 main maxims of the Sharia. Remind me what they are? I mean, sorry, not the 5. That does actually set up the 5 main maxims, but that's not what I'm talking about. The 5 main objectives of Sharia. Sharia comes to protect 5 things, which is what? Remind me again? No? Character is a mix of all these things. Deen, number 1, followed by your honor, which you could put over here. Your intellect, which could be over here. Your property, which goes over here. Your wealth. Your life, your physical life is here. In that order. In some difference of opinion, the order, these are generally always the first 2 for sure. Because without deen, nothing matters. And without physical life, you can't have deen, right? So these are always the first 2. Some difference of opinion with these. So Sharia came to protect these 3. These 5. Which of these 5 does this hadith protect? Yeah. Huh? Honor. So we have one vote for here. Who agrees? We have wealth. Someone said life. So the Prophet ﷺ said people would make claims against others' lives, their blood, the others' lives, and then their property. So right away, for sure, 2 and 5. That's a no-brainer. But in reality, it's to protect all 5 of them. This hadith is about protecting all 5 from false claims. I can make a claim against these 5 for you personally. You stole. That's a claim against this and this. It's a claim that you violated someone else's wealth, so you must be punished because Sharia came to protect others' wealth. And it's a claim that you have violated a rule of the rules of Allah that also has a punishment because the Sharia came to protect that for society as a whole. So, but it's a false claim. So I'm harming your deen, I'm harming your honor, your reputation, I'm harming your wealth, I'm harming your body. They might cut off your hands or throw you in jail. Or even if there's no capital punishment, there's something else. So it's actually a defense for all 5. This hadith is defending all 5 for society as a whole. So this is about making sure claims are true and then resolving them according to a way that is most conducive to all of society. The second point that he said here that we want to highlight, or the scholars of hadith highlight, is that he said if people were given what they claimed, then who would make claims? He said men, rijal, ladda'a rijalun. Men would make this claim. Is this men meaning mankind? Or is it men meaning men, males? So remember, we explored this question several times. What conclusions did we reach? Help me. We already reached these conclusions. We did this before. In more than one hadith. What's the conclusion here? How do we settle this? He said if people were given what they claimed freely, then men would make claims against other people's blood and other people's wealth. But the burden of proof is upon the claimant and the oath is upon the one who denies. So you think mankind. Why? General terms. Well, he didn't general term. He said rijal. He said men. It could be a general term. What proves this is a general term here? Especially since in the first half he said qawm, a group of people. And even though that is default men as well, that is more likely to mean everybody. So in the beginning he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the beginning he said an-nas, which is very clearly everybody. لَوْ يُعْطَى النَّاسِ, if we give people whatever they claim, then men would make claims against people's wealth and blood. So that by itself is what we already initiated discussion by default, but then that adds to it being a pointed discussion because he used two different terms, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to keep it short, there's both opinions. One say mankind. Why? Because men and women could make false claims. Is there anything that is particular to men in this hadith that would be addressing them? No. So it's for all mankind. And others would say, no, there are, because men are more prone to take claims to court. That's what they've been doing throughout history, even till today, where it may not seem the case, even till today that is still the case. Men are the ones who make these claims. They're the ones who get into these disputes. They're the ones who commit the crimes that is disproportionately represented all throughout history, even till today. Men make up most of the prison system. So some would argue it is pointed towards men because they're going to be engaging in this. In fact, they're the ones who primarily are witnesses, right? So they're definitely primarily judges or only the ones who are judges. So they will argue, yes, it is particular to males. In the end of the day, the overall advice, the scholarly conclusion that a lot of scholars have reached is that the overall advice is unisex. The particular role, as we're going to see, may be played by males more or only in certain situations, but that's fine. So it goes both ways. So that's the first order of business, first reflection. The second is now to break down the hadith as it tells us and to understand these terms according to our deen. Right now, everybody here, myself included, our perception of innocence, of guilt, of claims, of arbitration, judging between people, it's very, at best, deficient of how this works in our deen. At best, it's deficient. Most likely, it's completely absent because we've never studied this. Anyone studied this before? Claims and disputes and judging Sharia? It's not an insult against you. It's not something that you'd reach, right? It's not something that would be likely taught in any circle or any madrasa or weekend school, right? They barely get us to do our wudu and our salah. They barely get you to do the basics, let alone to reach a concept like this. But you're an adult, generally speaking, except for that kid. Everybody else is an adult, right? So by virtue of you reaching this point in your life, you have notions of justice and judging between people. In fact, you've probably judged between people several times at this point in your life. How did you do it? When you face that judgment on the day of judgment, what's it going to look like? Who did you give what? They're going to drag you in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So none of this is secondary, right? None of this is extracurricular. And back to the main point is this hadith tells us a notion, this is what I was getting to, a notion that we already believe from this baggage that we have, which is you're innocent until proven guilty. So we already have that notion, right? That's in our society. But we have to fill it in correctly with the Islamic teachings. That's what's important for us to do. We're going to do that quickly by breaking down the terms. The first of them is the plaintiff, al-mudda'i, the one who's making the complaint. This has a couple of definitions in Sharia. I'm not going to break it down because it takes some kind of like working around and we don't need it for everyday life, which is the point of this class. But the point of what I want to say is that the plaintiff and the defendant are not always face value. And this makes a difference because it will make a difference in how the judge addresses them and how he analyzes their evidences. Who gets to speak first? Who has to defend against what? It all depends on that. And when you break down the definitions, according to the fuqaha, of who is the plaintiff and who is the defendant in English, they all sound the same. It all ends up being the one who's making the claim and the one who defends it against it. There is some slight difference that would be consequential in a Sharia court. We're going to see an example that will make it clear a little bit later. I'll get to it later. So that's the first thing. The plaintiff is the one who's making the claim, arguing the claim, arguing a change of the status quo. All these are different definitions that have different implications. We won't get into that. Number two, the defendant is al-mudda'i alayh, the one the claim is being made against. They are arguing, they're either rejecting the claim that's being initiated against them, or they're arguing a presumption of continuity. Things are as they were, nothing has changed. While the plaintiff is arguing things have changed. When we get to the examples, this will be clear what exactly it means. The third point, so we have the plaintiff, we have the defendant that the Prophet ﷺ is outlining, because he's structuring for us what? We're using this hadith to structure what in the future? Judgment as part of an Islamic judicial system. That's why we're doing this. We're creating an Islamic judicial system. In fiqh, you'll spend 2 or 3 semesters studying only this hadith and all of its implications. The entire judicial system almost stems from this one hadith and others that are very similar. This hadith in its variations is narrated multiple times over and over, meaning the Prophet ﷺ said it in different variations to multiple people in different settings as he was judging between them. That's why it's so significant. And now we chose this one because it's the most comprehensive and it's also the shortest, without like a long story in it. So number one, who's the plaintiff? Number one, who's the defendant? Number 3 is the burden of proof. And that is al-bayyinah. So it's not directly in this hadith, but it's from other hadith. But proof in Islam now, which is called al-bayyinah, is divided into a couple of categories. What is considered proof in Islam? And this is like a big part of the discussion. We probably won't get through all of it, but let's see how far we get. He said we have the plaintiff, al-mudda'i, complainant is a better definition. He's making the claim. We have the al-mudda'i alayh. Well, I'm just going to write defendant or denier. Defendant works. Denying the claim. Then we have the evidence, which is called al-bayyinah. So evidence is divided into bayyinah, qarina, and yameen. You could translate this as clear evidence. It's not a good definition. It's okay. Supplementary evidence or corroborative evidence. And then this is an oath. So who brings the evidence? Right away, that's the first stop. It is the claimant. The one who's making the claim produces the evidence. What does that mean off the bat? Someone comes in here and says, Mohammad hit my car. Option 1, could resort to that. I told the judge I wouldn't. So instead what I'll do is say, where's your proof? He says, my car is broken. Look at it, it's in pieces, and your car's behind it. What do we do now? Is that this? That's what this hadith is all about. So if it's not, what do I have to do, me Muhammad? Absolutely nothing. In Shari'i court, I don't have to do anything. He doesn't have the evidence. I don't have to do anything. Is that true? The hadith is saying no. I have to do what? I have to take an oath. This is the last part that we're going to get to and explain. There's some difference of opinion, but then the court case is settled. Who fixes his car? Who broke his car? That's his problem. I cannot be demanded to solve this problem when there's none of this, linking me and forcing me to be a defendant. Makes perfect sense, right? This is exactly as the Prophet ﷺ said. Why is this important to set up the system and codify it? Is because, like he said, that people, maybe men in particular, but people for sure, will make claims against each other's property and bodies. Because we're not a perfect society. He's speaking to Muslims, he's speaking to Sahaba. He's saying people will make claims against each other. They won't always be just. That's one. Some people aren't, not everyone's an angel. Number 2 is, even if they are just and they're good people, they could be what? They could be mistaken. I saw you take my laptop with my own eyes. I literally saw Mu'ayyad do it, but could I be wrong? How often does that happen? All the time. Who did you see? Someone who looked just like him. Or you imagined it. Or you were like, 1,001 possibilities could happen, and they are logical and possible. So Islam came to build us the system that now we approach. So if someone doesn't have any evidence, in a court of law, they could be asked to swear as a defendant, and we'll get to explain that in a minute. If it's not a court of law, then the answer is, get away from me. I don't owe you anything, right? You have no right to make a claim against me, and I have to defend against it. If it's that serious and saying, no, I think it's you and I'm ready to face the music about it, or the nasheeds, because music is haram, then you will take me to the court and this system will get implemented. But before that, if you have no evidence, then you have no claim, right? This is very important because that's not how people function. So this begs the question now is, well, first of all, important to establish that the innocent until proven guilty. The Islamic version of that is al-aslu bara'at al-dhimma. The default, al-asl, or the default is the innocence of you have no accountability. The default is you have no accountability. You don't have to answer to anything. So that's innocent till proven guilty. Al-aslu bara'atu al-dhimma. So what is considered bayyina now? That's an important point. First, for sure, is witnesses. Eyewitnesses. Number 2 would be a confession. And then number 3 is should we do witnesses now? We'll do witnesses after Maghrib. All right. We'll break this down more after Maghrib, but we'll just list them now. Number 3 could be an oath. Some difference of opinion about this, but then the oath is number 3, and then we'll break it down after Salah. Any questions quickly before we start for Salah? So the last thing we'll mention is the first order of business for a judge in a Sharia court or a lawyer in a Sharia court will to be establish all of these things. They must be clearly established. These are legal definitions, right? These are legal values. If you can't establish these legally, if you don't know that they exist, then what's the number one conclusion? Huh? You should not be judging between anybody over anything whatsoever. People misplace their shoes. You should stay completely quiet. That's the conclusion that we've reached so far. If you're not familiar of the system the Sharia has created for the judge to consider before passing a verdict, you have no business passing any verdict on the smallest level. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even a ud arak, a stick of miswak that people brush their teeth with. Don't open your mouth about it. Who it belongs to, who should have paid for it, how long it should be. The quality is not what they usually sell. All these things that we freely give each other and then fuel people to make decisions or give verdicts even, pass judgments, you owe him or her that. You have no business. This is a system. It's not a game, right? You are passing a verdict that is going to be accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to break down the system a little bit further, inshallah, after Maghrib.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا اعتدلوا تراصوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم إن وأنتم تعلمون يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ومساكن طيبة في جنات عدن ذلك هو الفوز العظيم وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى ابن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة فأيدنا الذين آمنوا على عدوهم فأصبحوا ظاهرين الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين فلا أقسم برب المشارق والمغارب إنا لقادرون على أن نبدل خيرا منهم وما نحن بمسبوقين فذرهم يخوضوا ويلعبوا حتى يلاقوا يومهم الذي يوعدون يوم يخرجون من الأجداث سراعا كأنهم إلى نصب يوفضون خاشعة أبصارهم ترهقهم ذلة ذلك اليوم الذي كانوا يوعدون الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salam, rasulullah. Just picking up where we left off. The breakdown of Islamic system of disputes. First is the claimant, which is al-mudda'i. He's the one or she's the one that makes the claim, and because they make the claim, they have to do what? Provide the evidence. The second person is the defendant, which is al-mudda'i alay. They deny the claim, it's not true, and they do what? They take an oath. Maybe. They may not have taken oath. We'll talk about that. Number 3 now is the evidence itself. And it's divided into 3 pieces, which is what? Right, bayyina, which is direct or admissible evidence. This has, like, we'll describe it. Qarina, which is corroborative evidence or supplementary evidence. We'll talk about what makes something direct and supplementary in a minute. And then the oath. Now, when it comes to the bayyina, we have witnesses. You want to give these numbers? We have witnesses or admission, confession, or the oath is also used as a bayyina. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, when it comes to the witnesses, you guys like the flow chart? This was born out of my own confusion, so you're welcome. Yeah, I suffered so you could have it easy. When you look at fiqh, by the way, fiqh as it was originally written, they didn't have paper to spare or ink. So when you look at any fiqh book, if you look at its original, it's written like this. That's it, every single page. So it could be chapter on, where does the chapter on wudu start? Right here. And it'll say chapter on wudu. No change of ink, no change of color, and it just says chapter on wudu. Where's like the list of things that break your wudu? It's like here in the sides. And if you were to open it, it's illegible. It's impossible to read. They didn't have paper. They had a lot of stuff going on. You know, resources were scarce. So if you open a fiqh book of the same book that was written 800 years ago, but you read it today, it's color-coded. It has these lists. One time I had a professor, like he passed by and he looked at it. He's like, he's like, what is this? He's like, you guys are such babies. Like, I can't believe this. And he was like outraged. It's like, not our fault. Like, whose fault is it that technology and like paper is no longer rare? But anyway, so basically, you need to, as a student, a separate topic, you need to get into the own science and art of making lists and flowcharts for yourself to help you understand. The older texts, they never have that, and it's you know, if you see a book that's been done like that, it's definitely been reworked from an older text if it's based on one. But anyway, that's just an interesting tidbit. Witnesses, what makes a witness? What do we need to, what do we care about? You know, what are the checklists? What is the checklist that we need when it comes to a Muslim witness? Some of these, if you go, by the way, to other books, you'll find different numbers because some of the conditions I just put together. Some of them they'll separate into their own list. So you might find the 9 conditions of a Muslim witness elsewhere. Just keep in mind these are my own numbers. So what do they need to be? If it's a witness now, faster. They need to be saying that's true. Muslim, always, when dealing with Muslims. If it's a court case between non-Muslims, not necessarily. So everything that is not always, I'm going to put with a little red dot. Not always. Even against Muslims, there could be a situation where the witness is a non-Muslim. It's not the norm, but this is the norm. This is the default, so that's why I'm putting it up here. What else? Anything else? Adult? We're going to add a dot there, Sevi, or no? We must. I'm going for the marker. So adult, in some cases, children can bear witness. And, you know, it depends on the child and depends on the case. So you'll see in some Sharia cases, they will consider people who, remember we talked about this in other classes, people who can either, they've reached a point of tamiz, where they can differentiate between either men and women or right and wrong, depending on the context. Or al-irhaq or murahik, which is somebody who's basically a teenager, preteen, what we'd call a preteen, someone who's just on the cusp of puberty. So they would be considered in certain cases, they can bear testimony, even though the default is adults. Anything else? Yes, Amir? So integrity. We're going to put integrity last or before last, not because it's least important, but this is the order we're going to look. If someone's insane, doesn't matter what their religion is or their age is, they can't bear testimony. So this is in relative order. So integrity is looked at close to last because this is all, before it, you could summarize it in one word, which some scholars do, and they say 3 conditions or 2. You could summarize all this in one word, which is what? Competence. are they competent to be a witness? If they're not adults and they're not Muslim and they're not sane, they're not even competent, like physically, intellectually competent, before we get into like their character and their morality. So anyway, integrity. Integrity means two things. Number one, they're not known for any major sins or to violate, any major commands. This is basically they uphold the tenets of Islam in general, and they don't engage in any of the prohibitions in general. Not any major ones. So a major one would be, for example, if this person is testifying in a court case and the person would present to a judge that this person doesn't care about Islamic, doesn't eat haram. They eat haram, for example. They commit a major sin. Or they don't pray. They don't engage in any regular worship whatsoever of the obligations. The judge could discount their witness. Their testimony is not going to be considered. Why? Because they failed in their primary purpose to Allah. So how can I trust what they have to say? All of this, in general, we're going to say this probably several times, is taken into consideration by the judge. So it's not black and white. The judge takes it into consideration depending on the case. So number 4 would be competence in a specific, even though I said this could all be summarized by competence. This one is like a literal, like when it comes to like memory. Let's say the person can't remember their name, right? Or something not as extreme, but they're known to have an absolutely abysmal memory. They're known. They're not mentally ill. There's no physical illness. There's no brain injury. They're a normal person, but everybody around them knows this person will forget what day of the week it is. If that's known about them and they present that to an Islamic judge, they could cancel their testimony. Why would I take, you saw them 6 months ago, you don't remember what you were wearing yesterday. Like what's the chances of that establishing justice? That's what all this is pointed towards, establishing justice. The number 6 would be what? What do you think? We'll get to, these are like details about the witnesses. That comes next. That's not a condition. These are conditions of a witness. So for her to be a female, she can never be a witness. That's not true, right? So even the default is not male. That's why I didn't put it here, as many scholars have argued. The default is not male witnesses in Sharia. So that would be integrity. If you gave false testimony once, you will never be a witness ever in your existence in Sharia law. Huh? So that goes to integrity, Moed. What are you saying? Reputable goes to integrity as well. Good job. So no conflict of interest. No conflict of interest. Who made up that word combination? And who spelled it like this? I don't. It's Thursday. It's end of the week. No conflict of interest. So if you're gonna, you're not compromised. So what could be conflict of interest? So you said one thing, sister, which is family. Can you never testify for family? Some judges will say you can never testify for them, but you could testify against them. Like if you're going to be a witness against them, that's fine. But for them, they'll never, some scholars have said never, in any situation. You can never testify for somebody. Others said no, not any situation, but in most situations it's going to be a no. Who is your witness? Who saw this happen? If you are the claimant and you're going to produce the witness is in favor of who by default? You, right? And it's your family member. What is it, can you assume safely that he will side with you by default or feel bad that you lose? Yeah. Unless it's like, not a good family member, then why would you call them to be a witness, right? That wouldn't make any sense. So the fact that you're calling them to witness means you have good relationships, means why would they not be inclined? I'm not going to say why would they tell the truth, because they're Muslim, hopefully they'll tell the truth, even if they're your family. But why would they not be inclined naturally for your favor? They can't be. It's impossible. So even if they're trying to be honest, there's a natural inclination that's pushing them the other way. Why put them in that position? So the Sharia would say no. Another conflict of interest could be, business. You're my business partner. Meaning if you lose here, I lose. Or it could be your neighbor. So they'll mention a neighbor. So if for example, if I bear witness against you that this part of your land is not yours, I gain something, right? Because I'm your neighbor, it's adjacent to me. So anytime there's a conflict of interest whatsoever, someone has something to gain, whether testifying for you or against you, that's always going to be analyzed. And the close ones, like family, are almost always eliminated by default. This might have to get proven. Someone comes to the judge, I can prove they have a business relationship. I'll say, okay, once you prove it, I won't take his testimony. But family, there's no proof. It's like, that family actually hates my guts. The judge won't look into it. It's like family, by default, not accepted as a witness. So There's a couple of points now that fall under this, which are really just the asterisks. And one of them is they have to be eyewitness testimonies. For it to be considered a bayyinah, clear, admissible proof, it has to be eyewitness. Doesn't mean that videos don't count and don't have a role to play. Super important. But what it does mean, this one can't not match now. It's not gonna work for my OCD. It will come to corroborative evidence in a minute. Any questions so far? All of it is clear so far? Yes. Yeah. So let's say they're a sane Muslim adult who's competent and has integrity. They're a good Muslim, but then they're your cousin. They'll be eliminated as a witness. One of these, any compromise in, so this is the conditions of a witness. That's why I didn't put male or female here, because that's not a condition. By virtue of being female, is she automatically denied or disqualified from being a witness? Not in most cases, actually. Only in a couple of them, which we'll talk about now. So just very quickly, why eyewitness? Number one is that because the Sharia has a direct melding between your day-to-day, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your own personal spirituality, and then the system of society, government, judiciary, judging between people. It's directly connected to you as an individual in Islam. So eyewitness testimony is tied to, a good front-facing spiritual reputation with others. Eyewitness testimony is tied with your reputation and your responsibility towards the society in front of Allah. So it was emphasized for all of those reasons. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, He says, وَلَا يَبَ الشُّهَدَاءُ إِذَا مَا دُعُوا. The witnesses cannot say no once they are summoned. So meaning it's what? It's an obligation, it's wajib. And the scholars have differed. Is it a communal obligation, meaning if some people do it, it's enough? Of course, it'll differ on the context, meaning you individually, how much of a unique witness are you? If you're the only one who's seen this, then yes, it's an obligation upon you, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is, it's an obligation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَكْتُمُوا الشَّهَادَةَ وَمَنْ يَكْتُمْهَا فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. Do not conceal testimony. Whoever conceals it is sinful at heart. And, the Prophet ﷺ said, for example, of the greatest of sins of kaba'ir, major sins, is false testimony. So this all emphasizes the spiritual component of it. So that's one. Number two is it's a social capital. Eyewitness testimony in Islam is a social capital. What does that mean? Yeah, social capital. What does that mean? It's social capital. Part of the utility that it serves in a Muslim society is that it's social capital. That was the first part, that keeps the ummah together and just, because it's each one of our individual relationships, responsibilities. The second point is that it is social capital. So everybody is encouraged to not just bear eyewitness testimony, but be true to it and take it seriously because it's social capital. What does that mean? So it could ruin someone's reputation, not just that. That's not the angle I'm looking at. So you can use it for personal gain. Like it's a personal tool that you use. If you lose the ability to bear witness, to hold testimony, you can't sign off on contracts. People have to sign off on your behalf. You're like a kid now. We can't bear witness to your own contracts or sign off on them, let alone other people's. You can't help in arbitration. You can't help your cousin when he's in a difficult situation in tons of legal work. You can't be a witness at his wedding because you ruined your social capital. So now, even if you're not religious, do you have an incentive to bear witness, eyewitness testimony, and uphold it? You do, because it's a glue of society. We all use it. We all care about this, the religious and the non-religious. We use it in marriage. We use it in finance. We use it in judiciary. We use it in disputes. We use it in capital punishment. This is a serious component for all of us. So all of us will try to bear witness justly for the sake of Allah, even if people aren't religious, because there's something to gain for all of us in it. It creates a system. Because the argument from the Western academia is, you're going to take, DNA testing, you're going to take fingerprinting, You're going to take video cameras and you're going to throw that away just because you and somebody else say, I swear by Allah, we saw him, and now he gets executed? Are you guys out of your mind? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm in the hot seat now, how to defend this, our backward system. Well, that's not the case at all. But now you're in that hot seat. Now you feel like, oh my God, how am I going to defend eyewitness testimony? They're going to say two people can't lie? Because that's an argument that some people use. They'll say eyewitness testimony because two upright people with all this description, that's what will ensure the truth. Is that true? If I find two sane Muslim adults who are competent, who are good Muslims, who have no conflict of interest, will that ensure that they tell the truth? Absolutely not. Does it make it very likely? Yes. With everything that I'm talking about, the social system, the individual duty, the individual spirituality, the the multiple uses of personal, criminal, finance. Sure, that may make it very likely. Does it prove 100% certainty of the truth? No, nothing does, because we're human. But that is the point. How can we create a system that makes us as close to the truth and justice as possible? Eyewitness testimony is one of that. Number one, why? Because it's a spiritual, day-to-day duty of every Muslim. Number two, because it's social capital that we all use, so we all care about. Some exceptions. What are some exceptions for the whole witness system? So that's what means eyewitness. They have to be there. I saw and I heard. That's what eyewitness means, by the way. Islamically speaking, I saw and I heard, not I know. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court, right? So it's a eyewitness testimony means I saw and I heard. So exceptions are like, for example, for capital punishment. Capital punishment means that there is a capital punishment attached to this crime, right? Like cutting off the hands, like lashing, like execution. So for those, most scholars have said it could be men only. And there's some difference of opinion here, but generally speaking. So for capital punishment, you need two witnesses and both must be men, according to many scholars. For zina, which is also a capital punishment in the case, but it's a special case where you need how many witnesses? 4. They all have to be males. And they all have to witness penetration directly. They're cross-examined in separate rooms, and they must provide explicit detail matching to the T, or that they themselves are punished and they lose their ability to ever have testimony again. With no capital punishment, the scholars have differed, but they generally do accept women's testimony. Some of them would put an asterisk there, which means it should have at least one male testimony or some other corroborative evidence, and some said irrespective, it's open. When it comes to finances, then you need 2 men or 1 man and 2 women. It's in the Quran, right? So these are for financial transactions. And there's other cases of special circumstances where either 1 man is accepted, or just 2 women with no man, or just 1 woman on her own. It's all depending on the context. It all depends on the context. These are the general rules that I shared with you. Why? Begs the question of why. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the short answer is Allah in His infinite knowledge and His infinite wisdom and His all-encompassing mercy and compassion and acquaintance with the special circumstances and time and place and jobs and physical nature and different temperament between men and women, He decides that certain things are more suited to a certain gender over another, certain things they can share in, and you know, this is His divine wisdom that He assigned these tasks. Of the most basic of them that people have mentioned here, of the difference of the number or accepted testimonies, of the most basic explanations are what? Besides the one that I just shared, which applies to all time and place. What are some explanations for this that we can glean on our own without the Sharia telling us? For there being a different acceptance of testimony between men and women, either in general, like men can testify here and women can't, or in the number, 2 women for 1 man. So the general idea is Allah knows best, and He told us these are the best suited rules. That is a good answer and that works. But with that being said, there are some reasons we can understand, which are so women don't do well in high stakes? I got you good, didn't I? I'm an expert misogynist. Don't mess with me, Wade. Say it again. You're just talking about in general. Me too. So higher the stakes, what does that mean though? You're right, but what does that mean? So why can't we say for zina, 2 women, well, let's keep the rule, we'll accept it, 2 women for each man, 8 women witnesses. Some scholars have said that. Some scholars have said that. They're the minority, but they're there. So some of them, because of that, they argued it. So what if it's higher stakes? And others said no. Go ahead, Sama. So that is something that they've mentioned. It is not the, most concrete, but it is possible that they said in capital punishment that there could be emotional involved, but that's one piece of it, because a woman could be, her piety could overcome her emotion, right? That's something that we all believe in for all of us, where it's like, no, this is justice, this person must be executed, or their hand is cut off, it's justice, I don't care about my emotion. A woman could do that just as well as a man. There could be the argument that no, they don't do just as well as a man, and that you'll find in tradition. But they'll usually pair it with something else, which is in the nature of these crimes, catching them, witnessing them, taking them to trial. It is not they've never been in that field, all throughout history. And today would be the exception where they're actually police officers and lawyers and judges. But throughout history, has that ever been the case? No. So the very nature of these crimes, in terms of the transgression of them, the procedure of catching them, they are completely oblivious to, or they used to be for the majority of history. Which would lead to the argument of everything that we're saying. I saved at the end, but since we ran into it now, with these things changing in time, would that change their status from bayyina to qarina? Because they're for sure qarina, corroborative evidence. But bayyina is what is admissible, meaning it is a slam dunk. We're going to follow the procedure right now. I'm going to draw it out step by step at the end. So if it follows this procedure, that's it. Court case is over. The judge rules for X or for Y. But when it's not clear cut, that's where we're going to look at corroborative. The whole discussion now with modern day scholars of fiqh is, can we move things from corroborative to bayyina or no? Or is that a divine injunction, meaning Allah said so? Because that's what the majority of scholars have said throughout the history. That bayyina is a divine injunction. Everything else is qarina, done, till the end of time. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said so. Others will argue he said based on what? That bayyina is only, he didn't say it directly, but he taught bayyina is eyewitness testimony, confession, or oath. Why? Only these 3 things. This is the only things available at his time. There's no DNA testing or videos. This is all, we're not going to get into this because we're not going to get to a conclusion. It's a discussion amongst modern day fuqaha. But the bottom line is, for sure, these 3 things are bayyina. For sure, everything else is qarina. Can you move things from qarina to bayyina? That is a subject of debate based on everything that we're discussing and more. So, those are some of the special cases. Next is, so qarina is everything else. Before qarina, the confession is straightforward. Somebody says, I did this. It's important to know in some Islamic situations they can recant their confession. When? No, I hope not. I hope we don't torture people. Yes? So they in zina, particularly, the scholars mention that they should be given how many chances to recant their confession? 4. 1 for each witness. That each of their confessions will count as a witness, and because it requires 4 witnesses, they're given 4 chances to recant. But besides that, a lot of them say in general, recanting is possible before the punishment is applied. So whether it's a fee or capital punishment, if it hasn't been applied yet, they can just simply say, never mind, judge, my bad, I was tripping. He says, go home, fear Allah. Not always, but that can happen. And the oath is, now, we're going to get to the oath when we go through the system and how it goes in order, but the oath is face value. I swear by Allah, I did or did not, whatever comes next. That is at face value. We'll get to it in the system. We'll put it into the system in a minute, but that's all it is. Yes? So I misunderstood you. It could be recanted if it was coerced by any means. Any means of coercion. Someone paid me to say I didn't actually do it. All those are fine. And no reason is fine as well, which is my bad. I don't know what I was talking about. I'm sorry. Like that would be accepted in Sharia court. Of course, some will say once the punishment has not been, like he's not on his way to the punishment, or like it hasn't been decided and he's on his way to it, or it has not yet been presented as official case in front of the judge. Meaning once it's in front of the judge, he says, okay, let me talk to you. It's too late to say, never mind. The pieces of evidence are there for analysis, not for admission of validity. Like, that's it. Someone, yeah, go ahead. Faster. Yes. Yes. That happened in the time of Umar, where you have 4 Sahaba who take one to court, committed zina, to be executed. When it's being processed, number 4 says, never mind. The stories all match. And number 4 sticks to the story. I saw so-and-so and so-and-so. The one piece that's missing is I'm not sure who the woman was. At first, all 4 stories match to the T, and they're detailed stories. Like if you read them in the Sharia books, you won't believe that's in a Sharia book. Like it's very explicit because it's not a game. This is somebody's life that's going to be taken, someone's honor is going to be desecrated forever. So you have to describe it to the T. They're cross-examined. They give the same exact story. That's it. It's ready to go. One of them says, you know what? I'm not so sure who person number 2 was. It was a little bit too dark. It could be the one that they all said by name, or it could be someone else. It's 50-50. So Umar tells there's one main one who brought the court case, and the 3 witnesses he brought with him. He's the main one. And they're all Sahaba. He turns to him and he says, cancel your case, because now you don't have sufficient witnesses. And if you don't have sufficient witnesses, I have to lash you. And I don't care about lashing you. That's not the problem. The problem is what? Your testimony will never be accepted again. You will be considered false testimony. That's not a label that I want to give to any of the companions of the Messenger of Allah. So if you recount your testimony, we'll just all go home. The companion says, over my dead body. It's whatever. They're people at the end of the day, right? And without getting into it and the explanation of why, it's a long story. Let's keep it brief. Umar, they go back and forth, and he refuses, and then he lashes all 3 of them. The one who recants his testimony, he goes home. He's not a witness anymore. He says, never mind. Then those 3 are lashed, and their testimony is never accepted again. How did we get here? It was for zina, yes. That's why I needed 4. No. No, not in this case. That's why it's a special case. Zina is a special case. So it's so much sterner, or more stern, because of the severity of the punishment, the severity of the accusation, the severity of the repercussions in general are huge. On people's reputation, on their lives, on the society. So the stakes are upped, and you risk a lot by not either having false testimony, or not having a sufficient case. Yes, even if you're telling the truth. Because what are you supposed to do at that point? If I'm 100% sure and I saw it and 3 other people saw it, we're just missing the 4th person. What's our job now? If you're Allah, go home. That's it. It's da'wah, or you do da'wah to that person, or just mind your business. Islam didn't come to witch hunt every sinner. It came to make sure that these things, number 1, have a general incentive not to do them, which is that punishment and the law. Number 2 is that to make it very difficult. To make it very difficult for these things to become normal and prominent in society. Not necessarily stop you from doing that. How does Islam do that? Not through the punishments, through the encouragement and Jannah and Nar and everything else that we're doing. And then to stop it from you, that's how it stops you from doing it. Then the punishments are not to stop people from doing it, stealing, theft, zina. It is to stop them from making it a norm and everyone seeing it. That's why the witnesses are part of it as well. That's another point. Yeah, Sammy, quickly, just so we can wrap up. So that is a special case called mula'ana, where the husband is accusing the wife of zina. That's a completely separate case where they're going to take a series of oaths, accusing one another of the sin or proclaiming innocence, and then at the conclusion of those oaths, both of them are just permanently divorced, and everyone goes along their merry way. May not be married at that point, but everyone goes along their way. So that's like a special case. It's not really like it doesn't really apply here because it's very unique and it's not settling a dispute, which is what this is about. So that's a special case and has its own setup, it's called mula'ana, and it's its own situation. So corroborative evidence is everything else beyond a bayyina, which is a witness, a confession, or an oath. And video, documents, corroborative information, DNA, fingerprints, all of that, like I said, there's a current discussion amongst fuqaha. Can that be moved to bayyinah? Because clearly some of it is admissible in court and very concrete, like video evidence. There's still the question of forgery and how these things can be switched, but they're not any, and in a lot of cases, they can be just as certain as eyewitness testimony, if not more, right? So why does it matter if it's qarina or a bayyinah? Because according to Islamic law, bayyinah is the number one way to slam dunk the verdict. Guilty or innocent, bayyinah. It's a lot harder to do with qarina. What the judge could do with the qarina, and the Prophet ﷺ did multiple times, is set up a compromise, a middle judgment. You do this, you do that. But he's not really announcing guilt or innocence because there's no bayyinah. It's not clear cut. Bayyinah comes from bayyin or bana, which means to make something clear and apparent. If we can't get certitude that you're guilty, what right do we have to call you an X or a Y? Or to take your money? Or to make you pay him or take her there or to do any of that? When al-aslu bara'at al-dhimma, we erased it, where Allah created us all free and innocent and equal in His sight, right? What we do next is different, but by default, that's how we all are. So what right do we have as non-creators, as creation of Allah, to take that default that Allah gave somebody and say, no, now you're guilty. Now you owe her or him this or that. Now your title in society is that. We don't have that right. So it has to be through the bayyinah only, which is why they are so strict about adding to that list, especially when for millennia, there was nothing to add to that list that was equal to bayyinah. Everything else was clearly a qarina. But with that being said, a study of Islamic history, the Sahaba shows that they acted differently and did raise qarina to levels at certain times. It's a long discussion, so we won't get into it now. But what I will add is, all scholars agree that using qarina, the scholar or the judge or the qadi may not be able to decide guilt and innocence, but could still issue penalties and directives accordingly. For example, with the laptop situation, he may not be able to say you owe money for that laptop because you stole it, but he could demand that your bag gets searched. Me and Amr, remember we said search his bag? Can we tell Mu'ayyad show your bag? He could just say the next person who comes near me, and what right do we have to say you're showing your bag before we leave? We could do social pressure, like if you didn't steal it, just show it. Like, we won't make fun of the Pokemon you got in there, whatever you're hiding. Like we'll let it go, but we just want to make sure it wasn't you. So Adam's conscience can be clear and he doesn't have any bad blood towards you, which he will have forever now because you're the only one in here and his laptop is missing. So that's social pressure. But the judge, can he issue a law that he must show it? Yeah, he can. No, he can't. He may say, based on corroborative evidence. What is a corroborative evidence? He was the only one in the room, right? And he was the last one to see it. If there was no corroborative evidence, the judge can't do that. He physically can. Like he might get the police to do it, but he's sinning and Mu'ayyad has a case on the day of judgment. If there's no corroborative evidence, because then in that case, it's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ warned against will end up happening. People will make a line. They all have a claim against Muhammad, and now I got to swear against this one. This guy's going to search my bag. This guy's going to search my nose. This one's going to check my bank account, all my transactions. And I have to sit there for a long, period of my life just defending false claims against me. How's that fair? So corroborative evidence is important, but it's important also to understand it in the holistic system of Islam. So the last thing that we'll cover over here quickly is the exact formula, so we can have it all in front of us one shot. Any questions about any of this? Any questions about any of this? Go ahead, Adam. Yes. So in modern day, and not just modern day, all throughout history, they did work based on qarina from the Sahaba themselves. From the time of the Sahaba, where they didn't only judge based on bayyinah because it's not always possible. In fact, in most cases, you have like half a bayyinah and 10 qarinas. 10 corroborative pieces of evidence. And then one like eyewitness testimony. So they would judge based on that. They would make the verdict based on that. And a lot of times when you look in the past, you cannot see what capacity the judge is acting on. Umar ibn Khattab, is he acting, this is my official verdict based on the evidence, or is this a discretionary verdict, what they call ta'zir? Ta'zir is discretionary verdict or punishment. Discretionary. What does discretionary mean? It's up to the judge. Meaning this isn't what the law says. This is what I analyze the situation and I pass a verdict according to what I see. In Islam, can you do that? Of course you can. Like the law might say that nobody owes anybody anything. But based on my discretion, I will give you this verdict as the ruler, as the judge, as the imam. And it's binding on you. Islam, you could do that, right? So we have the hadith of Zubayr ibn Awam. He comes to his neighbor from the Ansar, takes him to the Prophet ﷺ and says, every time it rains, Zubayr dams the water. And his land is higher than mine. So if he dams the water, I don't get any water. We spoke about this before, right? Last week. It's the same hadith. So tell him to not dam the water when it rains. And there's a couple different narrations of the situation. In one narration, the Prophet ﷺ, he tells Zubayr, don't dam the water when it rains. So Zubayr asks him, are you doing so as the Messenger of Allah? Is this a command from the Messenger of Allah? Or is it discretionary? So the Prophet tells him, no, it's discretionary. I'm just trying to help out neighbors. So Zubayr says, I'm going to dam it. I want my water. My land is uphill. I run out of water fast. He gets all of it. I need to dam it. So when he rejected this, the Prophet ﷺ went back to the first role, which is a qadi. So he told him, okay, since we're doing this back and forth now, in that case, dam it only a certain length. He used to dam it like this. He says, now you dam it like this, 1 inch shorter. Anything, and don't ever stop it from flowing past. Meaning, you're right, you are overhill, but I'm only going to give you 1 inch. You didn't listen to it nicely, now I go from discretionary to qadi. But the whole point of the hadith and others like it is that he, from the very sunnah of our Messenger ﷺ, at times he acted as a judge, discretionary judge, and at times as an arbiter from God. Meaning Allah said this, no matter what. Here, did Allah say this? No. Right, this isn't a divine inspiration. That was the whole point of this. So the judge can do that as well. The qadi can look at people, can use the qarina and say, based on that, I'm going to do this. When we look in the past now, what Umar did, we don't always know which one it was. That makes it harder. This is what leads to this whole study and this whole back and forth. The whole point is, now what I want to do just to wrap it up is just to show you the court case or any dispute. It's not just a court case, remember, it's any dispute in Sharia which you may be the arbiter of. They'll come up to you, you look religious, you have a beard, you wear hijab, judge between us, my cousin stole my bike. What do you do then? What do you do then? Huh? Ask for proof, step 1, that's where you start. Not very good. But I like it. It's not bad. It's not the worst thing someone could say. Huh? Higher voice, please. Listen to the second part. Also a decent answer, but not what I'd want you to do first. Go work it out with your cousin. Well, they didn't. That's why they're here, right? What are you going to do next? You're a kafir. I don't even need to listen to you. The first step that would behoove you to do is to take it somewhere else. Take it somewhere qualified. Right away. Whatever it is. Smallest item, smallest dispute. Like, hold up, guys. I know a sheikh. Don't come to me. Please. I know somebody. They can settle this. If you have nobody, it's not wrong to say, I can't help you guys. You don't know what you're going to do, right or wrong. You don't know what you're going to be accountable for. So first step would be that. If it's low stakes, very low things at stake at hand to lose, then you could consider these steps. The plaintiff makes a claim to the judge or to the arbiter. Again, it could be an official court or it could be just you in the masjid. What does the judge ask next? What happens next? I'm right, arbiter, not judge, because judge is like official position. Arbiter could be anybody. What does the arbiter do next? Ask for evidence. What's the evidence for this claim? So, he doesn't have evidence. He's just running his mouth. What do we do with him now? Dismiss the case? That's it? If he doesn't have evidence, what do we do? Ask the defendant for an oath. Did you do this? Did you take this?
But that was only in a court case.
In a court case will be demanded, meaning you must follow through. Because if we're sitting together and I say, I'm ihlif, you can say, get out of my face, and you can just walk away, and what can I do? Like, I was like, all right, I tried. But in a court case, you can't do that. Like, you could say, I'm not gonna swear, I'm gonna go home. Judge will say, okay, you're not going home. And you're also not getting any property, or you're not going anywhere. You're going to jail till you swear, or like, so they have the ability to do that. But in general, this is where it would go in arbitration, even if it's not an official court case. But when people come ask you, you may not officially assume the role of an arbiter. Most likely you will not. But then you'll use the things that we learned to guide your process. That's what I want from you guys here. Please don't go judge between anyone, anything ever. Just give general guidelines, which you could always do. Be honest, be kind to each other, compromise. But you'll never need to do this process, but it still helps you to know it. So no, then he asks the oath from the defendant. If yes, what happens? So him providing evidence is assuming that it's admissible and that it's correct. So we skipped something at number 2 first, which is before asking for evidence. Sorry to mess up your notes. That's why I should write with pencil. Haha. All right. Step 2 is the arbiter, before asking for evidence, asks the defendant, is this true? Because if the defendant says yes, we're done. I don't need evidence. I don't need anything. I did take his cookies. All right, give him back. That's it. Or buy him new ones. Ask defendants. Or to explain, I did take him, but he gave them to me, right? This is where it can go next. So if the answer, if the defendant denies, then he asks for oath. Sorry, asks for evidence. Guys, wake up. What's wrong with you people? Come here and lounge around and just sleep. Defendant denies, then he asks the plaintiff. All right, P. Ask P for evidence. If the defendant admits, judgment for the plaintiff. Wow, I've always wanted to say that after seeing you on Judge Judy. Judgment for the plaintiff. I said it out loud now. Scratch it off the bucket list. If he produces evidence, now coming here, the defendant has a chance to respond to the evidence. If he doesn't respond to the evidence, then that's it. The court is in favor of the plaintiff. So, the scholars have differed now that they differed in these situations. Number 1 is, does the judge now turn to the defendant and ask for an oath at this last point? So if there is no evidence, right? We were here. This goes here 2 places. No evidence. What happens? Ask defendant for an oath. Evidence. Then he can continue the case, argue against it, or it's judged for the plaintiff. So if there's no evidence to ask the defendant for the oath, they differed who does that. Should the judge do it by default? Like, oh, you have no evidence, will you swear that you didn't do this? They differed if that should be prompted. Some say yes, that should always be prompted. Others, they say if the claimant, the plaintiff, doesn't request it, the case is dismissed on the spot. So we'll say, is there any evidence? Did you take the laptop? Mu'ayyad says no. Adam, do you have any evidence? No. If we all stay silent here, Mu'ayyad goes home, we're done. Case is dismissed. They differed. Should let's say I was the judge, say, Mu'ayyad, swear that you didn't take it. Then it's dismissed, or Adam has to say, make him swear. Right? So this is something that they differed over. I'm going to skip all this for the sake of time. What if the defendant refuses the oath? This is a good one. What do you guys think? What if Mu'ayyad says, I say, swear that you didn't take it? He says no. Automatic guilt? Why else would he refuse, right? Makes no sense. Classic, say wallah. No, I don't. No, I won't. That means you did it. Clear. This is bayyinah, right? This is a clear line of evidence. Why would you not say wallah except that you did it? Right or wrong? Who agrees? I have a bunch of, you guys are the most dangerous bunch of extremists. danger to yourself and others? Absolutely not. You don't like to ihlif, you're the man. That's the righteous, the way of the righteous. They would refuse to use the name of Allah lightly. Because the name of Allah means, Wallahi means, as I'm sure as Allah is real and true, I invoke His name and His certainty and His truth that this happened. That's serious. That's not something that you take lightly. As a Muslim, supposedly, Allah means a lot to you Muslim people, right? That's the whole premise. But then evidently not if you say, Wallah, you stole this, Wallah, I swear on this and that, left and right every 15 seconds. That makes no sense. Even though that does not count as an oath, with how people use Wallah today, that's what they call al-laghu fil ayman. Pointless oaths that don't mean anything. You're not liable in front of Allah for them. You don't have to fast 3 days. But that still doesn't dismiss the fact that you're taking the name of the greatest thing in existence, Allah, and taking it very lightly, very disrespectfully, in vulgar situations, in sarcasm, in humor, in things that are not befitting. So, throughout our history, beginning from the Sahaba, there were people who would refuse to take an oath by Allah ever. Which is why when they said, Wallahi, the world stopped. Everyone said, whoa, this guy is serious. That's why an oath is a part of the court system. Because people didn't say Wallahi left and right. They didn't take oaths left and right. So, based on that, a lot of the scholars have said, if the defendant refuses to swear, he cannot be forced to do so. Because it's not easy for people to swear on something. So some scholars have said al-yaminu ala man ankar, the oath is upon the one who denies. The word upon indicates obligation, ala, because it does in other places in our sharia. So the Prophet is saying it's an obligation, so he could be obligated to, but that's where we said the court would be the one that obligates him. Meaning you can't hold him down and say you better swear. It has to be court, and his obligation only manifested by the court. The Malikis and Shafi'is said he's sinful for refusing the oath, but cannot be forced to do so, and the oath actually in this case rebounds back to the plaintiff. The plaintiff will be told, you swear that he stole it. So if Adam says, I can't swear that he stole it, assuming that inshallah Adam's a good Muslim and like he's saying, I can't use the name of Allah. I think he stole it and all the evidence points there, but to swear that he did it, I can't. The court is dismissed. The case drops now. You couldn't swear, you guys go home. Right? It hasn't reached the serious level where you can take it to court then. You either settle it amongst each other, or forgiveness, or see each other on the Day of Judgment. Right? The 5 objectives of the Sharia are not in danger. Now it's more of like a social thing, like Sharia tells you guys, hey, get along, figure it out. And there's systems for that as well. What happens after the oath? So Mu'ayyad did happen to swear, Wallahi, I didn't take it. What happens then? Case is dismissed. Some have mentioned that the judge would give the plaintiff an opportunity for new evidence. Like, do you have anything else before I send this home? And that new evidence can only be presented if it's actually new. The plaintiff now has to prove. He comes back, Adam comes in 6 months. I have proof that he stole it. Now Adam has to prove what? That this evidence is new. That wasn't present 6 months ago. Because the court case has been dismissed already. These are all like finer details that are that have a lot of like fine tuning that we don't have the time to do here. It's actual breakdown of fiqh. But important things that the scholars have mentioned at the end is that this is a system that's made for an ideal resolution that may or may not happen. Why? Because people are people. And this could mean that they're sinister, they're evil, they're trying to game the system. But even if they're not, they're going to be people at the end of the day. Someone could be sure that you stole something from them and you're innocent, and they take you to court and they win. And they feel justified, and no one's a hypocrite, no one's malicious. It was just a big misunderstanding. But because we're all human, it ended up in the wrong folder and processed wrong. Then that's what the Day of Judgment is for. But even in that case, as a warning to that, to people who might look out for that, the Prophet said, إِنَّكُمْ تَخْتَصِمُونَ إِلَيَّ وَلَعَلَّ بَعْضُكُمْ أَلْحَنُ بِحُجَّتِهِ مِنْ بَعْضٍ. You come to me in disputes, and very likely that one of you is more eloquent in presenting his case than another. You're a better speaker. Adam's a better speaker than Mu'ayyad, right? That's bound to happen. So what's that case then? What happens there? So he says, فَمَنْ قَضَيْتُ لَهُ بِحَقِّ أَخِيهِ شَيْئًا بِقَوْلِهِ فَإِنَّمَا أَقْطَعُ لَهُ قِطْعَةً مِنَ النَّارِ فَلَا يَأْخُذْهَا. So if I decide something for you from the portion of your brother, meaning I'm judging for you wrongfully, this belongs to you, but you know it belongs to him, and you're able to procure it because of your words, you are a better talker, you falsified evidence, you switch things around, then know that I'm giving you a piece of fire, so don't take it. I'm giving you the hellfire. This land, this animal, this whatever wealth it is. They also emphasize in these hadith, or in the explanation of hadith, Imam Rajab, he mentions, at the end, إذا حكم الحاكم فاجتهد ثم أصاب فله أجران وإذا حكم فاجتهد ثم أخطأ فله أجر. It's the opposite end now. So the first end, the Prophet warned us that some people might game the system and try to take more than they're due, and they'll match all of this. They'll have the plaintiff and the claimant and the evidence, it'll all be fine. That doesn't mean they're okay because they know they're lying. This hadith covers the other end of it, which is if a judge or ruler decides a case and strives to determine the correct ruling and is correct, they get 2 rewards. And if a judge or ruler strives for the correct answer and was incorrect, they receive 1 for their effort, but they missed out on the good deed for getting the right answer. And this hadith translates into, even with this system, the judge is human. He may make a mistake. If he does it correctly and sincerely, he's fine. The day of judgment is the ultimate equalizer. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-qudatu thalatha, wahidun fil jannah wa ithnani fil nar. Judges are 3 categories. One of them is in Jannah, 2 of them are in the hellfire. فأما الذي في الجنة فرجل عرف الحق فقضى به ورجل عرف الحق فجار في الحكم فهو في النار ورجل قضى للناس على جهل فهو في النار. One in paradise, 2 in the fire. The first man recognizes the truth and judges accordingly. So he is in paradise. The second man judges the truth and recognizes the truth and judges according to the opposite. Knowingly goes against the truth, so he is in the fire. And the third man judges without knowing the truth in ignorance and is also in the fire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. With the emphasis on certitude and coming down to the bottom of things before judging, Islam encourages you to do what? Don't look for the bottom of things. Mind your business. This hadith must be understood, tied closely to hadith number 12, which is min husn islam al-mar tarku ma la ya'nih, mind your business. You're not required. Islam actively prohibits spying, snooping, looking into people's houses. You'll find underneath certain court cases and Sharia law, straight up from the hadith of the Prophet himself, you're looking at someone's house and they poke out your eye. No retribution. They owe you nothing. You should have minded your business, right? So it emphasizes forgiving others, overlooking their mistakes, not following up with their shortcomings. And then if it must happen, if none of that is possible because it is relevant to you or because you need or because there's a greater harm and you must actually find out, here's how you do it. The Islamic system of solving court cases and figuring it out. So what do you guys say? You're all experts now? Everyone's ready to figure it out? You ready for some scenarios? No? It's harmless, right? It's like one of those situations where they give you fake money, you invest in the stock market, you broke tomorrow. It's fake money. It's okay if you hit 0. This is like that. But only do it here, please. So, scenario number 1. This is something that Ibn Rajab mentions underneath this hadith. A woman in a village becomes pregnant. Should she be punished? You said no? So is there evidence of a crime? No? She's the Virgin Mary? Is born how did she become pregnant? Okay. She could have gotten pregnant by her husband. You're right. The whole point is she doesn't have a husband. That's like the whole point of the scenario. Thank you, though. It's a very important clarification. I didn't think it was necessary, but you're right. So she's unmarried. Is the pregnancy enough for prosecution? Not persecution. So we have a yes here. Another yes, extremists. No. How else would she have gotten? That's what I asked. Assaulted? Okay, so that is a possibility, isn't it? She could have got married, you didn't know? Is that a possibility? So they'll mention it in the example. It's like a village, so it's unlikely. That's unlikely that someone will get married in a village of 50, 100, 200 people. No one will know. Even if that's the case, where's the husband? Who is he? Sisters, strangely silent. Huh? Say it again. Well, it's a hypothetical, so it's at the judge. How did it reach there? It's here. She's visibly pregnant. Everyone sees it. It's a village. So they purposely make the example small because then you can't say, oh, well, it's a huge city. I don't know all the males here. I don't know who she marries. No, it's a small village. And there's, is this, the point is in the hypothetical, is the pregnancy in and of itself sufficient? So the answer is no. Well, there's difference of opinion, sorry. According to the vast majority of scholars, she cannot be punished in and of itself because of the pregnancy. That's insufficient evidence. There's assault is one. So that's all they'd mention. Now we know there's more than so they would also mention a secret marriage, or you don't know that just yet. Just the pregnancy on itself is insufficient. Secret marriage is not ruled out, assault is not ruled out. Nowadays we can add IVF, right? This is a whole other possibility. So there's multiple possibilities that the pregnancy in and of itself is not bayyina. It is a qarina. It is corroborative evidence. Meaning the judge can use that to take action, but cannot convict her of zina. That's a verdict that's unavailable. But could take action like investigate. Can she Islamically say, mind your business and leave me alone? Depending on how small the village and how big of a ruckus that happens, yes or no. If it's a major city and she could say none of this is anybody's business, can she Islamically say that? Well, yeah. It's between her and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and her and her family and however they choose to figure this out. But if it's a small village and it's like a big controversy, now no, this must be figured out because it affects all of us, right? It affects everybody. No, that's the whole point. Like, and not just capital punishment, but can she be considered someone who committed zina? We don't have enough evidence to establish that title even, let alone capital punishment of lashes or execution. No, well, women don't get banished at all. No, only the men. Yeah, it's misogyny, man. It's the opposite of misogyny now. So the women always complain. They have this hadith which sides mostly against men according to many scholars. It's specific that men are the ones who make false claims. We have this, with the man who commits zina. If he's unmarried, he is lashed 100 lashes and exiled for a year. The woman gets lashed 100 lashes only. The woman also gets lashed with her shirt on. The man has to take it off. So, it's fair. Well, some of these things are not as simple as I'm saying, but you get the idea. Everybody's equalized in the end. A man and a woman come to a judge. The woman says, I became Muslim first. And he says we became Muslim at the same time. So what? Well, that's the first problem that you're asking, so what? But that's okay. It's a mental exercise. So what? Why is this why do we care? A woman comes to a judge. She says, I became Muslim first. Her husband says, I became Muslim, a month ago. Her husband says, no, we both became Muslim today. The nikah is invalid. If she became Muslim first, yeah, I said a man and woman arguing about when their nikah was done, so they're married, Adam. Like that's at face value. But you're right. Maybe I didn't say enough details. So they're arguing about when they got married. Oh, I didn't say they were married? Oh, no, you're right. That is consequential. All right, everybody said no, so you guys are right. My bad. So how did Abu Amira get it? Like, he's awake. That's how he got it. Everybody else is no, you're right. That one just happened to be my fault, coincidentally. So it's consequential because if she became Muslim first and he didn't follow up immediately, there's a difference of opinion about how long and the details there, but then their marriage will be nullified. But if they became Muslim at the same time, the marriage continues by default. What's the first order of business here? Super important. We're not going to come to, by the way, I'm not going to solve this fiqh-wise, because solving it is not important. What's important is the thinking process. What's the most important order of business? You weren't here in the beginning, so no, you can't get it. The paper is the evidence. That's not the most important order of business. Also evidence. Witnesses comes under evidence. Oh, it's erased by now. So witness, evidence is, we're not there yet. Before evidence, what do we start with first? Who what? No. That's all evidence. You were about to say it. It looked like you had the right answer. Be confident. All right, no confidence. It's okay. Huh? Who is the claimant? Who is the defendant? Who is the plaintiff? Why is that significant? Because that's who's going to produce the evidence. And that changes. In this court case, now as I was telling you guys earlier, this is actually more important than it seems like when I explained it because of this. If she's the plaintiff, she has to produce evidence that she became Muslim first. If he's the plaintiff saying, no, our Islam is at the same time, she has to, if he's the plaintiff, he has to prove when they became Muslim. So who's the judge going to consider the plaintiff? That's where the definition of the plaintiff comes into play. Because is it the one who's making the claim, then it's her. If it's the one who's arguing continuity of the situation, then it's him. And she has the one who has to argue that the situation has changed, which is their marriage. Right? So this changes everything. So depending on who is the plaintiff, that's who will produce the evidence, and that's what will determine whether the marriage is dissolved by default or not. So it's super significant. Depending on when they come, right? If they came, it's been a week, their marriage is still intact and they figure it out. But if it's been like 6 months, no, the marriage is dissolved at this point if he wasn't Muslim for that whole time. It's super consequential, as you can see. So these are all very light work, just thinking exercises. Take them all with a pinch of salt, including the conclusions we made here, because this is all just thinking about the system. The conclusions of halal, haram were all just part of the thinking exercise. I wasn't exact about them because there's a difference of opinion that needs to be explained and context that needs to be taken in consideration in that fiqh situation. We did none of that because this is just exploring the hadith and not the specific situations we shared. So the woman getting pregnant, the neighbor, the disputes, all of that, take the conclusions with a pinch of salt and practice or consider the whole principle rather than the exact details. The last thing here that I won't go over, but you can go over on your own, is the amount of evidence and tradition in the Quran and Sunnah against false testimony. It is one of the greatest sins. It is so serious. And that is the reason why many of the righteous, beginning with the Sahaba, would refuse to ever take an oath. They'd never take oaths, ever. Because the amount of evidence, in fact, Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he says, if you say wallahi and you're not sure, you're not 100% sure, that counts as false testimony that earns punishment in the hellfire. It's not enough to say, I think this happened. You have to be 100% certain, or don't invoke the name of Allah, whose name is Al-Haq, the truth. That's how important truth and certainty is to him. That's one of his names and attributes. So don't use the name of Allah lightly. The false testimony or false oath is so serious. In one hadith, just for an example, they said the Prophet ﷺ was laying down and he's listing the major sins: murder, shirk, disobeying parents. And then they said he sat up, so he was like reclining, he sat up, and he kept saying false testimony over and over until we wished he'd be quiet, meaning that's enough, like you're making us uncomfortable. Stop bringing it up, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like the amount that you're just repeating the same sentence is making us feel weird. So that just shows you it was not a light issue in general, let alone when it comes to court now and causes people to lose money or lose property or lose rights. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who stick by the truth, uphold the truth, understand the truth, live by the truth, and die by the truth, and to not put us in a position where we would be accountable without having the sufficient knowledge and tools and then guidance and blessings from Him. Any questions? The last few minutes, inshallah.